Hello, hello. Welcome back. Today we have another interview with a former Jehovah's Witness. Today we're going to be talking to Ramiro. Hello, Ramiro. So before we dive right into this, I'm just going to ask you, Ramiro, why should the people watching this video, why should they watch it all the way to the end?
Okay. Because even though there might be, they know some of these aspects of what I'm going to be discussing, hopefully this will reinforce them to realize that, this is an organization that doesn't have God's spirit or any type of divine spirit. This is an organization that is, in my opinion, and I might be exaggerating, one of the most damaging cults in the world. Through these experiences, they'll find that, or these stories, they'll find that, it's the opposite of what they teach, and just something that needs to be known in this
Yeah.
world.
Yeah. And as we were prepping too in our conversations prior to doing the recording too,
Mhm.
we talked a little bit about how the organization actually causes people to be people pleasers. We'll
Yeah.
touch on that for a little bit. And
Okay.
then you also made an interesting point too, that obviously there are people with personality disorders within the organization.
Hmm.
Either the religion attracts them, which is very possible. It's a very fertile ground for
Hmm.
attracting people with personality disorders, but perhaps the organization itself has a personality disorder. So we're going to touch on that just a little bit later too. So
Yeah.
let's dive right in. So let's just get started with your story.
Okay. So I belong to a family of immigrants. I was born in Cuba, and we immigrated to the United States in the 70s and found ourselves in Portland, Oregon. It was around 1974 that my mom started studying. My dad was a very social creature, so he sought out other Spanish-speaking people in and around Portland, Oregon. And one of his friends had a wife who was a regular pioneer. And then she would come to visit with him to talk to my mom, give her magazines, and try to get a book study started. At first, she wasn't interested. In fact, I even have memories of her using the watchtowers as fire starters for the fire. Yeah. I remember these magazines piled up on the next to the fireplace, and that's what she would use them for. But according to her, she started reading one of those magazines while she was trying to start a fire, and it happened to be one about, yeah, it happened to be one about blood, and it made sense to her. It resonated with her for some reason, and
Mhm.
so she started thinking, okay, well, if that made sense, what else is this saying? So she
Right.
started reading more, and it all started to make sense. So she started studying, and if I remember correctly, I think that was in late '74.
Mhm.
I know that by spring of '75, she was bought in. And the reason I know this is because I have this memory of my birthday being celebrated in kindergarten. I was in kindergarten in the spring of '75. And they celebrated my birthday. They gave me a crown. They all sing and dance. And I still have really good memory of that. And then when I came home to tell my mom, I mean, she didn't get mad. She didn't yank it off, but she did take it off firmly, ripped it up and put it in the garbage and said, "We don't celebrate birthdays." Didn't explain why. Just said, "We don't celebrate birthdays." And I just accepted it. Uh,
Right.
yeah. So, we went to meetings. It was my sister, both my sisters and I, myself and my mom. My dad never interested. At first, to him, it was just some innocuous church. There was a time when he was opposed. I don't know what caused him to be opposed, but he was really mean about it to a
Maybe
certain point.
because it was a cult.
Well, yeah, but I mean, he didn't see it that way. I think it was because 3 meetings a week plus service. So it was
Mhm.
taking up a lot of my mom's attention.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I mean, it was your typical Spanish speaking congregation of the early 70s or late 70s, early 80s. I do have a memory of people commenting about 1975.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people would say that, you know, Jehovah used 1975 to, and correct me if I'm saying this wrong in English, to shake the shaft or shaft
Just one
of the
second.
wheat.
So you had something, you remembered something about 1975?
Yeah, I had a memory of, you know, many brothers and sisters commenting about how the purpose of 1975 is just a way of Jehovah shaking in much way that you and I would shake a cloth, the dust from a cloth, basically shaking the those of a weak faith or little faith out of the organization, kind of like give the organization a cleanup.
Right, right.
So I have that memory as well. And so that was pretty much it. It was just us going to the congregation.
So you were growing up with an unbelieving father.
Right,
So in the congregation, it's your mom and it's your two sisters and it's you.
correct.
And so you're, spiritually like not a spiritual orphan, but you don't have a spiritual head. So what kind of spiritual head support did you get growing up in the congregation?
Not much. You know, in that era, um, for families whose father wasn't in the congregation, which wasn't that common, because usually, you know, when especially in the Spanish speaking culture, you know, Mexican culture, who goes to church,
Right.
and there weren't very many who were fatherless, and so we weren't given as much attention as other kids.
Right.
And that's, I mean, too bad for them, because I was soaking it in, as far as believing it and being indoctrinated, being conditioned to feel that this was the truth.
Right.
It really did reach my heart. Uh,
Right.
and the downside of that, apart from the fact that it was all bull, um, is that when I failed at something, it, um, I mean, it made me feel really bad, and I felt, you know, constant shame.
Right.
And my mom, bless her heart, she was one of those types that would reprimand us by saying things like, "Do you want to survive Armageddon? Do you want to live forever?" Whenever we would act up or not act as she thought we should act. Um, and I mean, at that time, I didn't really give it much thought. But looking back, you know, how do you tell a kid, or why do you tell a kid, you know, why you put the fear of death into a child?
Right.
That, you know, that's not right. And so those are the type of experiences I had, apart from the difficulty of having an opposing father,
Mm-hmm.
and just not given the attention in the congregation as other kids were given. Uh,
Right.
so one of the memories that comes up in that respect was when I was interested in the magazine department. You know, for the Spanish speaking congregations, which was relatively new at that time in that place. The magazine department was just this, you know, 4 by 2 foot box on wheels. And it would be rolled out at the beginning and end of each meeting. And it reached a point where I took an interest in helping the brother. I became friends with the brother who was a ministerial servant in taking care of that. And little by little, he let me help him until I was, you know, doing it all together. And it reached a point where he spoke with an elder to, you know, take it over, to be delegated that privilege full time. And the elder said, well, only baptized brothers can do that. And that was fine with me. I was excited when he said that. You know, I was nearby and overheard the congregation, and I was happy because I thought they were going to encourage me to take the steps to get baptized so I can have this privilege in the congregation. And what happened was they gave you know, as soon as the next meeting, they gave it to someone else. They gave it to the son of another elder. And I never I was never allowed to do it again. So
Right.
there was no encouragement in that respect.
And as a young person who's trying to out,
I'm sorry, you blacked out. I didn't hear you, and I
yeah,
can't.
can you
There
hear
you are.
me? There. Yeah, so I'm sure that affects your self-esteem.
Mhm.
That affects everything at a very young age. How old did you say you were?
So that time, I think I was 11,
Mm-hmm.
and the
Yeah,
reason I
yeah,
the reason I say that is because it was around that time that my dad, because he had lost his job that he had for a long time and was jumping up from one job to another, he got some janitorial accounts.
mm-hmm.
And then he started taking me to the janitorial accounts, and I started working more and more with him and just missing meetings. I think it was a solid 2 years that
Uh-huh.
all I did was Sunday meetings.
Right.
And so there was no consideration of that. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
everyone knew that my dad was taking me to work. Um, and, uh, and then when that stopped, even though I started going to meetings again, I was still a second class citizen. So,
Right. Right.
um, yeah. So, and the ironic thing with this is the brother that they gave the magazine privilege to, less than a year later, he was out. He had left
Right.
his family. He had left the truth. He had moved to worldly families in California.
Mm-hmm.
There was another golden child, so to speak, who did the same thing afterwards. So we have these two brothers who, they got baptized at 12. They were regular pioneers. They were giving number 4 talks, and they're both gone, and I'm still around. Yet I'm still considered a second class citizen.
Right. Right.
Now, so and so I went from that congregation, moved a couple of congregations to see if things would improve, and it never really did.
Right.
Um, let's see. Eventually, I did get baptized at 20.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, and even though I was single, I wasn't seeing anyone. I mean, there was a sister that I was seeing, but I had to drop her because she was a drama queen, to say the least. And when I was going through the questions to be baptized, instead of, um, I mean, the brothers were encouraging on the outside, but there were other brothers who were my friends who were telling me that the word around the congregation is the only reason I'm getting baptized is to get married.
Right.
So that's the type of encouragement that I got from most of the people. I mean, and those were elders and ministerial servants that were saying that.
Yeah.
So that's what I had to put up with. Um, and on the day that I got baptized, I met a family who had just moved from California.
Mm-hmm.
Important detail because about a little less than a year after that, I eventually started dating the daughter of that family.
Mm-hmm.
And in the first district assembly that she and I went together as a couple, there was that sister that I had been dating before I was baptized, and she was up on the platform being interviewed. And mind you, as I mentioned, I had to drop that sister because it was all drama with her, and I couldn't really put up with it.
Uh-huh.
And here she is being interviewed on the platform in a district assembly about interviewed by a brother who was giving a talk about sacrifices made for the service. And she was being interviewed about what she did to become a regular pioneer. And she mentioned that the reason she's a regular pioneer is because she was thinking of getting married. She read the scripture during personal study about not forgetting Jehovah in the time of your youth. And because of that scripture, she decided to cut off her relationship and become a full-time pioneer. All of that was a complete lie. And
Yeah.
I'm sitting that next to my current girlfriend, listening to that and thinking, how could Jehovah allow this contamination in the sacred assembly? This is Jehovah's assembly. This is supposed to be sacred and solemn. and we have this sister who's just blatantly lying. How is that possible?
Right, right. You know, that's interesting because I always would wonder sometimes about the experiences in yearbooks and stuff like that that just seemed so unreal.
Mhm.
And you're not the first person that I've heard say they know the other side of somebody that was being interviewed on the stage, and that is not how it went down.
Yeah.
The way they twist things in order to, encourage people or set a good example, it really does speak to the lack of Holy Spirit that's guiding such things. Okay, so where do we go from here?
So just jump a year.
Okay.
I'm still with my girlfriend. We're
Mhm.
engaged.
Mhm.
We're at the district assembly, and it's actually the first district assembly that I go alone without my
Mhm.
mom,
Mhm.
um, because I'm in a different congregation. And I get to the hotel, I forgot my ties. And that might seem like a mundane thing, but it's important, and you'll see why. So I forget my ties, and I figured, no biggie. I'll just go to the mall. It's across the street from the stadium, grab some ties, problem fixed. And so I do what I normally do is I get to the assembly 2 hours early because I want to say hi to all my friends from across the district, which I've made over the
Mhm.
years. Um, Mental note: I all the brothers that saw me without a tie, they actually demonstrated compassion. They offered me their tie. They offered to go buy me ties. And I said, no, no worries. I already got that planned. I'm going to get that fixed. So I'm talking with a brother, and it's like 20 minutes before the session starts, and as a complete and utter coincidence, my fiance and her family come through the door nearby where I'm talking. That's completely unplanned, and I thought, great, they're here. I can go sit with them, and I start walking towards them. I didn't even get 20 feet near them when they saw me. They said,
Without a tie.
yeah, when they saw me without a tie, I didn't know that was the reason at the time. They just looked at me, smiled, said hi from afar. Now, remember, I've been engaged to their daughter for like, I think 4 or 5 months by then. And this is how they're treating me. And I find that's odd. So I couldn't get together with them for lunch. I couldn't find them. And oh, by the way, I did finally go ahead and get ties. So I went to the mall, got my ties, and problem fixed. And after the session, they had invited me to a pool party. They were invited to a pool party, so they had me invited me to the pool party. And I thought, okay, well, whatever was going on during the day, I guess it's over. But it
Mhm.
wasn't. When we were at the pool party, none of the family members talked to me, but my fiance sat me down and told me that we can't be engaged anymore. We're not broken up, but we can't be engaged because of the tie thing. And I mean, I don't remember the English word for it, but I was in shock. I couldn't believe that, especially since we had all these other brothers that were offering me ties. And so I accepted her terms. I accepted what she said, and she gave me back her ring, and she said, we're just going to take a step back and see what happens and see what develops going forward. Um, I didn't say anything at that time, but remembering back to the day that I got baptized, when I met them for the first time, her dad, when he made it to the assembly, forgot his entire suitcase. His entire his suitcase had all his clothes, shoes, jacket, pants, everything. Had his book bag and his literature, so he had practically nothing. He had to he had to borrow a suit from his brother-in-law, as well as a songbook and Bible. And here they are judging me for ties.
Right, right.
And
That's fun. That's funny too because I had those experiences too where somebody didn't like my skirt and somebody would complain about this, and I guess I never really thought about brothers having that same issue. The shallowness and the judgment is going both ways here.
yeah, and now that you mention that, shortly after that experience with them, even though I didn't bring it up because I didn't want to disrespect them, But I did notice that they did have a habit of judging others based on what they saw. Like if
Right.
there's a certain brother and sister who didn't go out in service as often as they did, then they would classify them as something wrong or spiritually weak, or
Right.
nothing. They would never mention anything. What can we do to help them? It was all,
Right.
what's their problem? We are a poor family, and we're all regular pioneers. They were all
Right.
regular or auxiliary pioneers. And they say, if we're poor and we're regular pioneers, why can't this brother and sister who has a job be a regular pioneer or an auxiliary pioneer? And so
Right.
that's an example of that kind of talk. And I mean, I didn't like it, but I didn't want to risk offending them by calling them out on it.
Yeah, that risking offending people, that a lot plays into what we were talking about earlier of the people pleasing that the religion really starts to create. The people pleasing usually starts in childhood, and it comes in from growing up in an environment where you're not free to speak or express your emotions. And it usually also starts happening too because we're in a world, whether it's our parents or in this case a religion that teaches you that you have to behave a certain way. You have to do something very specifically in order to get approval, to get attention.
Yeah,
And it creates people pleasers. It
yeah.
creates those people pleasers. Then, on top of that, we're constantly concerned about who are we offending? Who's going to, that constant judgment messes with people's self esteem, really, really messes with people's self esteem.
It goes. I think it goes even a deeper level, because if you are a person that likes certain things that would be considered unacceptable,
Hmm.
and I'm not talking about bad things. Like, for instance,
Right.
I liked sci-fi. I liked British comedy, uh,
Right.
but mostly because of cultural differences. No one else was into that, but
Right.
that's an aspect of myself that I could never share with anyone because
Exactly.
it's not understood, and it's considered, worldly, um, things that are part of this world.
Right.
And
Right.
so you couldn't share of yourself. And that's just an example. I mean, there's other things that people would hide because it just wouldn't be accepted or understood by a
Right. It would be
group.
judged.
Yeah, they would be judged for it.
Yeah.
um, yeah, so after that relationship ended, um, i was I was basically numb for a few years because I didn't know what to do. I didn't, here I was in this organization, which I was trying to climb the ladder,
Mm-hmm.
until finally a friend of mine um, prompted me to do a needs grader.
Mm-hmm.
And I did. I went ahead and did that. I upped and moved my stuff
Mm-hmm.
to Haley, Idaho, where there was a fledgling congregation, Spanish congregation.
Mm-hmm.
When I arrived, I think there wasn't even 20 people, 20
Yeah.
publishers, not even 20 publishers when I arrived. And I was there for 5 years at first. During those 5 years, I became a regular pioneer. In fact, I became a regular pioneer almost immediately after I arrived.
Mm-hmm.
I became a ministerial servant because it was such a small congregation. I was even given some elders' duties uh,
Right.
because of that, which is common in smaller congregations.
Right.
The thing with this congregation, though, there was this one family, and they were called the Perez family. And to say that this family was demonic is an understatement. I mean, all the problems that were caused in that congregation caused rifts between brothers and sisters, between families. People left the congregation, as well as in some cases the organization, because of them.
Mm-hmm.
So throughout the years there, that brought up again the question in my mind. It says, why is Jehovah allowing this?
Yes.
This
Yep.
is hurting so many hearts. I mean, there was, I used to conduct the Watchtower study.
Mm-hmm.
And there was one time when the father of this family commented on an answer in the Watchtower study. And, this is by then there were over 100 people on a regular basis in the Sunday meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And here's this brother who was commenting on this Watchtower study, but his comment was a stab at another brother in the congregation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then the other brother caught that stab. And when I called on him to answer on a Watchtower study, he did it back. You know,
That's a little awkward.
yeah, and I'm serious. I was almost at tears in that
Mm-hmm.
to give you an example of the kind of spirit that they had is I was giving a talk in the theocratic school, the theocratic ministry meeting. I gave a talk. I don't remember the theme of the talk, but after the talk, two sisters approached me. The first sister that approached me was, Brother Ruiz, thank you so much for the talk. It really touched my heart and made me really think about myself in such and such a way.
Mm-hmm.
The mother of this family came up to me and says, Brother Ruiz, you gave such a beautiful talk. I'm hoping that talk affected the sisters who are suffering from that condition and made them think twice about their actions. There was the oldest sister of that family. Her favorite hobby was to bring couples together and then break them apart.
Fun.
Yeah. So yeah, we had, and I mean, just 1 year in that congregation, and you would think yourself, why is Jehovah allowing this?
Right.
And it is one of the reasons why I left the congregation.
Right. So then eventually you do get married in the truth, right?
Yes. I met a sister before I left the congregation in Haley. I met a sister and we started dating, and that didn't change my mind to leave. I still left, and I would travel back and forth for a while. It was a 4-hour drive to meet her. Eventually, we did commit fornication. So shame on me. And we were really guilty about it. And we had our, what do you call it? Our judicial committee.
Judicial committee. Uh-huh.
So once again, I had my judicial committee in my congregation since I was a different congregation. She had her judicial committee in her congregation. And mine was pretty laxed. I was surprised. She told me about hers, and I was amazed at how much more detail they asked from her than they asked from me.
I've often wondered if the sisters get grilled a little bit harder for details than maybe they do brothers. I don't have any confirmation of that, but I've often wondered that.
Yeah, they did. I mean, mine was just basically overall review of how I got myself in that situation. And hers was, get me the nitty gritty.
Right, right.
Now, something else that stayed with me at that time was when the elders in my judicial committee said that I had to get married. And I assumed that was the rules. I assumed that was a command. I don't know. I don't remember if that's the way they worded it, but I knew that at that time I already knew about the shepherding book. And I thought that they were taking that command from the shepherding book. The elders in her judicial committee told her, don't worry about it. You don't have to get married.
Okay. So now that's interesting too. So on one hand, the brothers are automatically telling you you've contaminated her, you need to marry her.
Yeah.
She's getting completely opposite advice.
Exactly. And I thought they studied the same shepherding book. I thought they were supposed to say the same things. Where's the discrepancy, or why the discrepancy?
Right.
So we got married. She moved in with me to Elko, Nevada. That's where I moved to. It's Elko, Nevada. And then work-wise, things weren't going well there. And a friend of mine, in fact, one of my best friends, if not my best friend from Haley, said that he was going to leave and he would give me his job. And so I moved back to Haley, and we spent, I think, a year or two more there before I couldn't stand the winters anymore.
Mhm.
Also, there was a lot of um, problems in the marriage, problems that I really couldn't understand because, I was doing everything right. I tried having, regular family Bible study, making sure that we both got to the meetings, to service, make sure we do everything right as a husband, as a
Right.
Christian. But there were always problems, and I couldn't understand why. And same thing with the congregation. I would get a privilege, a small one, and almost immediately after I got it, I would lose it. And I wouldn't understand why. So I moved to the city, the nearest city to Haley, which was Boise. And um, the problems persisted. The marriage problems persisted. There was never any peace. And eventually I discovered that she was slandering me to the brothers and sisters. At home, I was being abused verbally and emotionally.
Mhm.
And I know that, from the interviews that I've been listening to over the years, that's surprising and uncommon
Right.
because you hear all these horror stories about sisters that are being abused and elders saying, stay with him, and they stay with him and they keep getting abused. And
It goes both ways.
it goes both ways, and that's important to remember that a man can be abused as much as a woman can.
I just would like to point out too that I might be convinced that marriages that are started under duress like
Mhm.
that, you know, your first intimate experience with with this person, which should be beautiful, it should be private, it should be wonderful, is full of guilt. It's full of shame. You're reporting all of the details to completely people that have nothing to do with your personal relationship.
Mhm.
Kind of, quote unquote, forced to feel like you have to hurry up now and get married. That is not the best foundation for a great
No.
relationship. That is, and then too, you know, a lot of times us the sisters, we're counseled to be submissive, blah blah blah. But then on the other hand, you as a husband, you're being counseled that you need to take the lead, and we're all being told that this threefold cord, that as long as we're spiritual and as long as we have Jehovah in the marriage, that it's your fault if something's going wrong. You're not doing it hard enough. You're
Yeah.
not doing it hard enough. And they are not taking into consideration whatsoever emotional abuse, maybe sometimes even physical abuse, or
Mhm.
flat out crazy people with mental and emotional issues, which no amount of praying is going to make that go away.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
sure that's probably what you found. No amount of praying and personal study solved mental conditions.
Yeah. And despite all that I was witnessing and feeling, I still had exactly that thought that all we need is Jehovah,
Right.
because that's what I was conditioned to believe. And any problems committed were problems that I was bringing on myself.
Exactly. Exactly.
Um, um, yeah.
But
So oh
Jehovah
yeah,
praying is not enough.
yeah. So it came to a head. I talked to the elders. I was going to talk to them about her. They stopped me cold. They didn't want me to go any further. And they said, it's time for a shepherding call. Now, after 3 years of being slandered by her, and now that I start talking, they want to do a shepherding call.
Right.
And so they came to a shepherding call. The shepherding call was ineffectual. They kept reading the scripture, that the woman is the weak vase or fragile
We-
vase,
the weaker vessel.
the
Yep.
weaker vessel. Um, and um, and that experience led me to conclude that the elders don't have Jehovah's Spirit.
Right.
There's no divine spirit with the elders.
Right.
And so I eventually told my wife, that's it. I can't stand it anymore. She left, and I stopped cold turkey. I stopped going to the congregation cold turkey.
Hmm.
And I decided that, when Armageddon comes, if Jehovah forgives me, he forgives me. If he doesn't, he doesn't. But I can't face this place anymore that I've been relegated to second class, chewed up and spit out so many times, yet I
Right.
give up and try again. I was done trying.
Yeah.
So I decided, no more. I'm out. I'm just going to live my life, wait for Armageddon. I still believed in Armageddon. I still believe
Right.
in the teachings and the doctrine.
So you're
Um,
physically out, but you're still mentally in.
yep, full POMI
Yep.
for 18 years.
Ouch.
Yeah. The conditioning is so prevalent inside, not just one's mind, heart, and soul. It's to the point where I didn't even bother researching anything ever.
Well,
It
and
just,
I think you had mentioned to me before too. So you're 18 years of, inactive. You're not going to meetings or anything. But were you fully enjoying the world? You're celebrating Christmas and you're
no,
celebrating
no,
birthdays,
no,
right?
no,
Right? There's the
no.
brainwashing. So
Yeah,
you're not in,
I
but you're
still,
not out either. You're not
yeah,
enjoying your life in the world either.
yeah. And despite that, I got married,
Mhm.
and my wife said, I'll respect your beliefs. She's full on Catholic.
Mhm.
She loves Christmas, she loves birthdays, she loves Valentine's, and we found a way to make it work. Instead of Christmas, since Christmas Eve was I love you day, because that's the day that we said I love you for the first time. So we gave each other presents on I love you day. That's on Christmas Eve instead of Christmas presents.
Gosh.
Um,
Brainwashing.
yeah, and she respected no gifts on my birthday, and so, we had a child. The child was eventually diagnosed with autism.
Mhm.
And so we dealt with that.
Mhm.
After some years of that, she started being distant and cold. And then she started having an affair.
Mhm.
And then she left the house. We got divorced. And I started going to therapy.
Mhm.
In therapy, we started delving into my people pleasing. What is it that made me who I am? Uh,
Right.
how could I have allowed this person? Now, mind you, throughout this therapy, I never brought up the fact of being a witness because I hadn't been one for a long time. I didn't think it mattered. Uh,
Right, right. Well, when you grow up in it, it seems normal. So you totally discount how impactful it is on your behaviors.
exactly. And then about late 2023, my therapist decided that, since my ex-wife had such an impactful effect, because by 2023, it had been 5 years,
Mhm.
or almost 5 years, that I'm still having an effect because of her.
Right.
So we started focusing on her and her condition. And without going into her too much, because of her, I started reading books like Stop Walking on Eggshells, Walking on Eggshells, Stop Walking on Eggshells, another one about narcissism. And um, and that gave me an understanding of her. And we
Mhm.
delved into that more and more in therapy sessions. And then in early or just before spring of last year, um, you know, we discussed the fact that her mom was diagnosed borderline personality disorder. She acted like that. We went full on talking about every experience that I had, and that's the first time we delved into it, like really a lot and really deep. And on my way home from that session, I don't know what it is that triggered it, but I had this thought in my head. It goes, gosh, this experience that I had with her over the years since I met her up until she left is very similar to the organization.
Right.
And that's when, for the first time in 18 years, I Googled Jehovah's Witnesses and just left it blank after that.
Yeah.
And that's the first time that I allowed myself to read everything, not 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 the the sketches, the funny stuff, just the serious stuff that has to do with them and
Right.
anything that's not from their website. And that cracked my skull open.
Right. Right.
That's when I had that I see dead people moment, in that movie I See Dead People, when Bruce Willis thinks back into the movie and discovers he was dead all along.
Right.
I had that type of moment.
Yep. Yep.
And that's when I started going down that rabbit hole that every ex-witness goes through, where they discover, they discover activists, they discover interviews. The first book that I read was one by Amber Scora called Leaving the Witness.
Mm-hmm.
And then that led me to Raymond Franz's book.
Yep. Crisis of Conscience.
Right. Now, the funny thing, side note, with Raymond Franz, when I saw the name and heard about the book, it triggered a memory back to when I was in my early teens.
Yep.
And my mom was talking in a circle of sisters. It was her and like 4 or 5 other sisters who were talking amongst themselves. This was shortly after Franz left the organization, and they were commenting about how he's an apostate. He was, affected by Satan and became demonic and got mentally ill, and that's the reason he left the organization.
Right.
It triggered that memory. So yeah, so I read his book, and that was an eye opener. And so
Right.
since then, I have been slowly trying to rebuild from that.
Right. Right. It's interesting because it's common for, well, I'll just say a woman to go from an abusive boyfriend to abusive boyfriend to abusive boyfriend, or abusive husband to abusive husband. She changes the face, she changes the name, but she goes from the same situation to the same situation. And really what the religion did was it trains people to accept poor behavior. It trains people to be familiar and accept narcissistic behavior, accept extreme behavior that is not appropriate, because we grew up in a religion that completely embraced inappropriate behavior. So when we to just kind of wrapping up here a little bit,
Mhm.
when we were talking in the beginning, we were talking about um, narcissism. So, what are your thoughts on how the organization itself is narcissistic?
Apart from the fact that it breeds both narcissistic people, but it also breeds the people who serve them. So we
Exactly.
have we have an organization that creates them, but then a narcissist needs its supply,
Hmm.
and the organization, and I was part of that supply. The
Right.
organization is in itself narcissistic in the way that when it wants you, it loves bombs you.
Right.
It when you don't act the way you should act, it it expresses its disapproval.
Hmm.
And if you want approval again, you better darn well act appropriately. And if
Right.
you don't act appropriately, you get shunned. You
So
know,
the
you
silent treatment, you get the
you get the
silent.
silent. Thank you. Yes, you get the silent treatment, and until you start acting correctly, then and if you don't, if you then
And they're the ones who determine what is correctly.
and they have permission to change what is correctly
Right.
the moment's notice. One of the favorite things for my wife to do was to tell me how she wanted a certain thing done. And when I did it exactly that way, it still wasn't acceptable because she actually wanted it this other way. And the organization is the same way. You do things this way. Oh, wait, now you can clink glasses.
Right. Right. Getting the process of getting reinstated is a great example like that too,
Mhm.
because there never has been any hard rule of how the heck you get reinstated. Some people would get reinstated after 6 months, some people it would be a year, some people it would be 2 years.
Or,
And
yeah.
yeah, I mean, there's no consistency of this is how you qualify. These are the steps. Obviously, it's go to the meetings faithfully to get reinstated until we freaking decide that that's enough.
Yeah. Um, I also reread those books that I had mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
and the conditions that are expressed in those books, the Stop Walking on Eggshells, uh,
Mm-hmm.
the other one, I can't remember the title, on narcissism. All of the
Mm-hmm.
personality traits that are expressed in those books are in the organization. So if you haven't done that and you are like me when you were still mentally in,
Right.
that's one good way to get mentally out, is to, make that comparison. And
Recognizing that you're in an abusive relationship with a religion.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay. Well, I want to wrap this up. I feel like it has been an honor and a privilege that you shared your story for the first time ever here. And welcome to the world of truly being free finally.
Well, thank you very much. And also thank you for everything that you do.
It's a pleasure. You know what? It is for people like you. It is for people that are on the edge, that are questioning their sanity, that are questioning what they should do. And so, thank you very much for watching. And please feel free to reach out. Let me put my email up here really quick. In case anybody else would be interested in sharing your story, you can reach out to me. Thank you very much, Ramiro. And I know you and I will be talking again soon.
All right. Bye.
Okay. Mwah. Bye.